So here we are. This is the Count of Monte Cristo cover. We're going to be covering this book, it was written by Alexander Dumas, a French author. You'll probably, if you're not familiar with the Count of Monte Cristo, you may be more familiar with his other work, The Three Musketeers. There is an incredible drawing done by Devereux of Alexander when he was a young lad and just casual and a bit of a dandy. You know, he always dressed really well. Let's see here, grab this. Had a little bit of help with grabbing some research this morning with Almontes. So, Alexander Dumas Davy de la Pelleterie was born July 24th of 1802. He was born in Picardy, France. His father was Thomas Alexander Dumas Davy de la Pelleterie, who was a black Frenchman born in Haiti, uh, who went on to become one of the highest commanders of the French Revolution Army and narrowly evaded execution during the Terror. His father's life was a major inspiration for the Three Musketeers novel by Alexander. His first play, Henry III and His Court, was produced in the year 1830 when he was 27. Dumas participated in the Second French Revolution and was part of the victor of that revolution of Louis Philippe, the Duke of Orleans, and was Dumas's employer before he was a writer. In the 1830s, so in his late 20s to his early 30s, he started writing serial novels for newspapers, which sold well enough that he was able to open a production studio that was staffed with several writers. And during the late 30s, early 40s, 1839 to 1841, he published Celebrated Crimes, an 8-volume true crime collection. He collaborated with Augustin Grissier, his fencing master, on a novel titled The Fencing Master. This novel included testimony from his fencing master Grissier.
Hi.
Hello, welcome in. On the Decembrist revolt in Russia, leading to the novel being banned in Russia and Dumas being prohibited from the country. So he got banned from Russia for writing about from the perspective of his fencing master, kind of based. He also, the character of Grissier shows up in the book of the Monte Cristo. I'll switch that over to the book cover there. He was exceedingly popular during that time. He was amassing tremendous wealth as a writer. And then, despite having this wealth, he didn't know how to manage it, and he was incredibly bad with his money. He purchased and then had to sell entire estates, depending on the ebb and flow of his income and his creditors' forbearance, really. While the Orleanist and the Second Republican eras were favorable to Dumas, the return of the Bonapartist rule was less so. Napoleon Bonaparte actively disliked Dumas, and Dumas fled France after Napoleon's election for Brussels, and he moved to Russia, so they must have accepted him back, and then eventually to Italy to participate in the Italian unification. So he was very immersed in the politics of France and the politics of Italy, and he eventually returned to Paris in 1864, but he passed away a few years later at 68 in 1870. He married Ida Ferrier. When he moved to Russia, they did not have any children. He did have, however, 4 other children with various mistresses, one of whom became a merchant, 2 were actors, and 1 was a fellow novelist. Dumas had a lifelong Freemason, was a lifelong Freemason, and regularly smoked hashish. And spent time with Victor Hugo and the Honneur de Balzac, among others. And something that was kind of interesting for the time, and something he struggled with, is that he was the grandchild of a slave, an African slave. And a lot of French aristocrats insulted him because of his blackness, because of his, heritage. And I think that it it doesn't matter who your parents or your grandparents are. I mean, talent is talent. So he really stuck it to the man, and I think that is part of the reason Napoleon most likely disliked him. Is just like he was getting above himself, and he had too much talent, and he was too well liked. Um, I think he was pretty impressive. A prolific author, amazing man. Died at 68. As you can tell, between his young 27 somethings to his later part of his life in his 50s, he was pretty eating pretty good. He was pretty rich. He dressed well, he ate well, and he was at times rich and at times poor. Anyway, we are going, so there is that. So this is the cover for today, and then here's a copy, the first page of the book, and I'm going to skip, there's intro and like a translator note and like multiple pages of the chapter, so I'm going to just skip ahead to right here and close that and close these. Anything that will wear down the computer. Just close that out. All right. He really did. He really did give us some bangers. Hi, Shuttered. Welcome in. Let's see. Yeah. I imagine his fencing instructor, I mean, the man got around. He was a lover. He was, an accomplished fencer. He was an accomplished novelist, producer of novels. He led a very interesting and full life in a very short amount of time. All right, let me take a quick sip because we're going to be reading for a while today. My goal is we're going to read, because as you can see, there are, hold on, let's do the quick math here. What is it? X's are 10s, L's are 50s, 55, 58, 71 chapters. So this will be, some of these chapters are only a couple pages, like chapter, what is that? 69 to 70 is only 6 pages. So some of them are really short. However, some of them are quite long. And so today we're going to read about the first 5 chapters, maybe 6, kind of see how I'm feeling. I'm going to probably stumble. There's a bunch of French words in this that are just not my forte, but I will endeavor to not butcher them too badly for any of the wonderful French listeners that might be here today. So, pray I don't insult anyone.
Hello. Reminder to stretch, sip, and take care of yourself. You are loved and cared for.
Aw, thank you. Solid advice. Big stretch. And a sip. All right, everyone. We're here to get the ball rolling on Alexander Dumas, the Count of Monte Cristo. All right. Chapter 1. Marseille, the Arrival. On the 24th of February, 1815, The watchtower of Notre Dame de la Garde signaled the arrival of the three-master pharaon from Smyrna, Trieste, and Naples. The usual crowd of curious spectators immediately filled the quay of Fort St. John, for at Marseille the arrival of a ship is always a great event, especially when that ship, as was the case with the Pharaon, has been built, rigged, and laden in the dockyard of old Phocaea. Little blurb at the bottom there. Marseille was founded by sailors from Phocaea in what is now Turkey. Okay. The dockyard of old Phocaea, and belongs to a shipowner of their own town. Meanwhile, the vessel drew on, and was approaching the harbor under topsails, jib, and foresail, but so slowly and with such an air of melancholy that the spectators, always ready to sense misfortune, began to ask one another what ill luck had overtaken those on board. However, those experienced in navigation soon saw that if there had been any ill luck, the ship had not been the sufferer, for she advanced in perfect condition, and under skilful handling the anchor was ready to be dropped, the bowsprit shrouds loose, beside the pilot who was steering the Pharaon. Through the narrow entrance to the port there stood a young man, quick of gesture and keen of eye, who watched every movement of the ship, while repeating each of the pilot's orders. The vague sense of anxiety that prevailed among the crowd affected one of the spectators, so much that he could not wait until the ship reached the port. Jumping into a small boat, he ordered the boatman to row him alongside the Pharaon, which he reached opposite the creek of La Réserve. On seeing this man approach, the young sailor left his post beside the pilot, and, hat in hand, leant over the ship's bulwarks. He was a tall, lithe young man of about 20 years of age, with fine dark eyes and hair as black as ebony. His whole manner bespoke that air of calm resolution peculiar to those who, from their childhood, have been accustomed to face danger. "Ah, is that you, Dantès?" cried the man in the boat. "You are looking pretty gloomy on board. What has happened?" "A great misfortune, Monsieur Morel," replied the young man. "A great misfortune, especially for me. We lost our brave captain Leclerc off Civica Vecchia." "What happened to him?" asked the ship owner. "What has happened to our worthy captain?" "He died of brain fever in dreadful agony." "Alas, monsieur, the whole thing was most unexpected. After a long conversation with the harbor master, Captain Leclerc left Naples in a great state of agitation. In 24 hours he was in high fever, and died 3 days afterwards. We performed the usual burial service. He is now at rest off the Isle of El Giglio, sewn up in his hammock, with a 36-pounder shot at his head and another at his heels. We have brought home his sword and his cross of honor to his widow. But was it worth his while," added the young man with a sad smile, "to wage war against the English for 10 long years, only to die in his bed like everybody else?" "Well, well, Monsieur Edmond," replied the owner, who appeared more comforted with every moment. "We are all mortal, and the old must make way for the young. Otherwise there would be no promotion. And the cargo?" "Is all safe and sound, Monsieur Morel. Take my word for it. It has been a voyage that will bring you in good 25,000 francs. As they were just past the round tower, the young man shouted, "Ready there! Lower topsails, foresail, and jib!" The order was executed as promptly as on board a man of war. "Lower away and brail all!" Apparently, brail is to haul in sails using the brail, a rope. Lower away and brail all. At this last order, all the sails were lowered, and the ship moved on almost imperceptibly. Imperceptibly. There we go. Moved on almost imperceptibly. And now, Monsieur Morel, said Dantes, here is your purser, Monsieur Danglars, coming out of his cabin. If you will step on board, he will furnish you with every particular. I must look after the anchoring and dress the ship in mourning. The owner did not wait to be invited twice. He seized the rope which Dantes flung to him, and with an agility that would have done credit to a sailor, climbed up the ladder attached to the side of the ship, while the young man, returning to his duty, left the conversation to the individual whom he had announced under the name of Danglars, and who now came toward the owner. He was a man of 25 or 26, of unprepossessing countenance, obsequious to his superiors, insolent to his insubordinates, and besides the fact that he was the purser, and pursers are always unpopular on board, he was personally as much disliked by the crew as Edmond Dantes was beloved by them. Well, Monsieur Morel, said Danglars, you have heard of the misfortune that has befallen us. Yes, yes, poor Captain Leclerc, he was brave and honest man, and a first-rate seaman, grown old between sky and ocean, as a man should be who is entrusted with the interests of so important a firm as that of Morel and Son, replied Danglars. But, replied the owner, watching Dantes at his work, it seems to me that a sailor need not be so old to understand his business. Our friend Edmund seems to understand it thoroughly, and to require no instructions from anyone. Yes, said Danglars, casting a look of hatred on Dantes. Yes, he is young, and youth is never lacking in self-confidence. The captain was hardly dead when, without consulting anyone, he assumed command of the ship, and was the cause of our losing a day and a half on the Isle of Elba, instead of making direct for Marseille. As captain's mate, it was his duty to take command, but he acted wrongly in losing a day and a half off Elba, unless the ship was in need of repair. The ship was as right as I am, and as I hope you are, Monsieur Morel. It was nothing more than a whim of his part, and a fancy for going ashore that caused the delay off Elba. Dantes, called the owner, turning toward the young man, just step this way, will you? One moment, monsieur, he replied, and I shall be with you. Then turning to the crew, he called out, Let go! The anchor was instantly dropped, and the chain ran out with a great rattle. In spite of the pilot's presence, Dantes remained at his post until the last task was accomplished, and then he added, Lower the flag and pennant to half-mast and slope the yards. You see, said Danglars, he already imagines himself captain. And so he is, said his companion. Why should he not give him the post? I know he is young, but he seems to be an able and thoroughly experienced seaman. A cloud passed over Danglars' brow. Your pardon, Monsieur Morel, said Dantes, approaching. Now that the boat is anchored, I am at your service. I believe you called me. Danglars retreated a step or two. I wish to know the reason of the delay off Elba. I am unaware of the reason, monsieur. I only followed the last instructions of Captain Leclerc, who, when dying, gave me a packet for the Marechal, for the Marechal Bertrand. And did you see the Marechal? Yes. Morel glanced around him, and then drew Dantes on one side. How is the Emperor? He asked eagerly. Very well, so far as I could see. He came into the Marechal's room while I was there. Did you speak to him? It was he who spoke to me, monsieur, said Dantes, smiling. He asked me some questions about the ship, about the time of her departure for Marseille, the route she had followed, and the cargo she carried. I believe that Had she been empty and I the master, he would have brought her. He would have bought her, but I told him I was only the mate, and that the ship belonged to the firm of Morel and Son. Ah, ah, said he, I know the firm. The Morels have all been ship owners for generations, and there was a Morel who served in the same regiment with me when I was garrisoned at Valence. Quite true, quite true. Monsieur Morel exclaimed, delighted. It was Policar Morel, my uncle, who afterwards became a captain. Dantes, you must tell my uncle that the Emperor still remembers him, and you will see tears of joy in the old soldier's eyes. Well, well, he added, giving Dantes a friendly tap on the shoulder, you were quite right in carrying out Captain Leclerc's instructions and putting in at the Isle of Elba, though if it were known that you delivered a packet to the Marshal and talked with the Emperor, you might get into trouble. How so? Said Dantes. I don't even know what the packet contained, and the Emperor merely made such inquiries as he would of any newcomer. But excuse me, monsieur, for one moment. There are the medical and customs officers coming on board. As the young man departed, Danglars approached. Well, said he, it would seem that he has given you good reason for dropping anchor off Porto Ferrajo. Most satisfactory ones, dear Monsieur Danglars. So I think the emperor mentioned here is quite literally Napoleon Bonaparte. It's interesting because if Napoleon didn't like him, I wonder if it's because of this book. I can only speculate. So much the better, replied the purser, for it is never pleasant to see a comrade neglect his duty. Dantes certainly did his, and there is nothing more to be said on the matter. It was Captain Leclerc who ordered him to call at Elba. Talking of Captain Leclerc, isn't Dantes given you a letter from him? No, was there one for me? I think that, in addition to the packet, Captain Leclerc gave him a letter. What packet do you mean, Danglars? The one Dantes delivered at Porto Ferrajo. How do you know that he had a packet for Porto Ferrajo? Danglars turned red. I was passing the captain's door, which was ajar, and saw him give Dantes the packet and the letter. He has not mentioned a letter to me, but if he has one, I have no doubt he will give it to me. Then, Monsieur Morel, pray don't mention it to Dantes. Perhaps I am mistaken. Just then, the young man returned, and Danglars retreated as before. Well, Dantes, have you finished now? Yes, monsieur. Then you can come and dine with us. I beg you to excuse me, Monsieur Morel. I owe my first visit to my father. All the same, I greatly appreciate the honor you pay me. You are quite right, Dantes. I know you are a good son. And do you know if my father is quite well? He asked with some hesitation. You are... Oh, I believe so, my dear Edmund. But I have not seen him lately. At any rate, I am sure that he is not wanted for anything during your absence. Dantes smiled. My father is proud, monsieur, and even had he been in want of everything, I doubt whether he would have asked anything of anybody except God. Well then, after this first visit has been paid, may we count on you? Once more I must ask you to excuse me, Monsieur Morel. There is yet another visit which I am most anxious to pay. True, Dante. I had forgotten that there is the Catalans. Once des Catalans, Spanish district of Marseille. Okay. True, Dantes. I had forgotten that there is at the Catalans someone who is awaiting you with as much impatience as your father, the fair Mercedes. Dante smiled. Well, well, said the ship owner, now I understand why she came to me 3 times for news of the Pharaon. Upon my word, Edmund, you are to be envied. She is a handsome girl. But don't let me keep you any longer. You have looked after my affairs so well that it is but your due that you should now have time to look after your own. Are you in need of money? No, thank you, monsieur. I have all my pay from the voyage. That is that is nearly 3 months' salary. You are a careful fellow, Edmund. Say rather that I have a poor father. Yes, yes. I know you are a good son. Off you go to your father. I too have a son, and I should be very angry with anyone who kept him away from me after a 3 months' voyage. I have your leave, monsieur, said the young man, saluting. Yes, if you have nothing more to say to me. By the way, before Captain Leclerc died, did he not give you a letter for me? He was unable to write, monsieur, but that reminds me, I shall have to ask you for a fortnight's leave. To get married? First of all, and then for a journey to Paris. Very well. Take what time you need. It will take us quite 6 weeks to unload the cargo, and we shall not be ready to put to sea again for another 3 months. But you must be back in 3 months, for the Pharaon cannot sail without her captain, he added, patting the young sailor on the back. Without her captain, did you say? Cried Dante, his eyes sparkling with joy. Oh, if you really mean that, monsieur. You are touching on my fondest hopes. Is it really your intention to make me captain of the Pharaon? If it depended on me alone, my dear Dante, I should give you my hand saying it is settled. But I have a partner, and you know the Italian proverb, chi ha compagno ha padrone. He who has a partner has a boss. Okay. But half the battle is won since you have already have my vote. Leave it to me to get my partners for you. Now off you go. I shall remain here a while and go over the accounts with Danglars. By the by, were you satisfied with him on the voyage? No. Seems like Danglars is a not so charming person. Take a second to drink. Hmm. There we go. That depends on what you mean by that question. If you mean as a comrade, I must say no. For I do not think he has been my friend ever since the day I was foolish enough to propose to him that we should stop for 10 minutes at the Isle of Monte Cristo to settle a little dispute. I never ought to have made this suggestion, and he was quite right in refusing. If you mean as a purser, I have nothing to say against him, and I think you will be satisfied with the way in which he has discharged his duties. Thereupon the young sailor jumped into the boat, seated himself in the stern, and ordered the oarsmen to put him ashore at the Canebière, which is the main waterfront street of Marseille. The name is derived from cannabis, or Latin for hemp. Canebière. Okay. With a smile on his lips, M. Morrel glanced after him till he saw him jump ashore. There he was immediately lost in the motley crowd that, from 5 o'clock in the morning until 9 o'clock in the evening, collects in the famous streets of Canebière, of which the modern Phocéens are so proud that they say in all seriousness, and with the peculiar accent which lends so much character to what they say, if Paris owned the Canebière, she would be a little Marseille. On turning round, the shipowner saw Danglars standing behind him. The latter, who appeared to be awaiting his orders, was in reality, like him, following the movements of the young sailor. But how different was the expression in the eyes of each of these two men as they gazed after Dante's retreating figure. My goodness. So that was chapter 1. Interesting, very interesting on all accounts, I think. So I think Dante is our main protagonist, and then I'm not sure about Danglars. I don't know, it's kind of mixing with modern modern media, because there's actually a pretty amazing version of The Count of Monte Cristo that came out, I think, in the early 2000s that I thought was quite good as a film. I'm not saying anything of import, Lasada. This book's been out for 200 plus years. I think I'm not going to give anything away that people haven't, seen in modern media. Side note, there was an animated Count of Monte Cristo that was simply magical. It was absolutely exquisite to look at. Let me see if I can find that real quick. I wish I could find maybe. Eh, images. It'll just have to do. Open image. New tab. There we go. So one of the things, so in this story, the animated version of the Count of Monte Cristo, the Count, not a spoiler, it's right on the cover, is actually portrayed as a vampire. Not a spoiler, but completely irrelevant. It was just an artistic interpretation of the Count, right? And what I loved the most about this anime is it's kind of hard to tell, but if you look at his hair, you see that like bluish pattern that's cut in there, and like the fabric of his cloak and the fabric of his sleeve. Anytime a character had any kind of pattern on their person, when they move, the pattern moves too. It's almost like a glass window that is going over the art that is behind it. It's really beautifully done. So if you have some free time and you want to see a really pretty anime, this one, mwah, absolutely gorgeous. Anyway, I digress. We are in the weeds again, as is par for the course. See, you thought I didn't spoil anything. Don't you worry. This is my first time reading this book, and I'm actually borrowing it from the Internet Archive for this reading. Hmm. Sometimes I will buy the books. Yeah, of course you are. Yeah. We are gonna read the next chapter. We are. Ah, yes. Well, I mean, like I said, I've seen modern media take, so it's not like I don't know the story. I actually received a hard copy, like a what's the word I'm looking for? Hardback, fabric bound. Oh my goodness. A hardback fabric bound version of this book last year from Fallen Thespian. He was really kind to donate that off my throne. I've wanted a copy for years. It just um, hadn't had an opportunity to get one. But now I have a copy and I really love it. It's just like it's beautiful and teal and orange, and it's just nice. Anyway, we're on to chapter 2. I'm planning on reading, I think this is one of the longer ones, so we'll see where we are after chapter 2, whether we'll need to do a 3-minute ad break then, or if I can read chapter 3. We'll play it by ear. Yes, teal and orange. Probably. Is it covered in, I guess I would call them domino masks or something, that it's like an orange mask looking thing covered over the teal fabric. Just a repeating pattern. Yeah, same copy. Nice. You have excellent taste in books, good sir. Okay. We're on to chapter 2. Father and son. Let us leave Danglars struggling with his feelings of hatred and trying to whisper some evil insinuation against his comrade into their master's ear, and let us follow Dante, who, after having run along the Canebière, turned down the Rue Noëls, I think, Rue Noëls. I'm just butchering all of the French. I'm so sorry. Here he entered a small house, situated to the left of the Allée des Melons, I think. Um, left of the Allées des Melons, ran up the 4 flights of dark stairs, and trembling with excitement, stopped before a half-open door which revealed the interior of the little room. Fair. It was the room which Dante's father inhabited. The news of the Pharaon's arrival had not yet reached the old man, who was mounted on a chair, and with a hand trembling with old age was busy staking some nasturtiums that intermingled with clematis climbed up the trellis before his window. Suddenly he felt an arm thrown around him, and a well-known voice called out, "Father, my dear old dad." With a cry of joy, the old man turned round and saw his son, pale and visibly trembling. He threw his arms round him. "What ails you, father?" the young man anxiously inquired. "Are you ill?" "No, no, my dear Edmund. My boy, my son, not at all. But I was not expecting you, and the joy at suddenly seeing you again has given me rather a shock." "Well, calm yourself, father. It is really I. They say that joy never harms anyone, so I came in without any warning. I have come back, and we are going to be happy together." "That's right, my boy," replied the old man. "But in what way are we going to be happy?" "You are not going to leave me any more. Come now, tell me how you have fared." "May God forgive me that I should rejoice in good fortune brought about by another's death. Goodness knows I never sought it. It has happened, and I have not the strength to regret it. Our good old Captain Leclerc is dead, father, and it is probable that with Monsieur Morel's assistance I shall take his place. Do you understand, father? A captain at 20 with a salary of 100 louis, besides a share in the profits. Isn't it really more than any poor sailor like me could hope for?" "Yes, my son, yes, it certainly is," said the old man. "With my first pay I shall buy you a little house with a garden where you can plant your clematis, your nasturtiums, and your honeysuckle. But, father, what is the matter? You don't look well." "It is nothing. It will soon pass." said the old man, but his strength failed him, and he fell backward. "This will never do," exclaimed the youth. "A glass of wine will soon put you right. Tell me where you keep it," he continued, opening one cupboard after another. "Wine will cure you." Interesting. For science, I guess. "It is useless to look for it," said the old man. "There is no wine." "What? No wine?" said the young man, turning pale and looking first at the old man's sunken and pallid cheeks, and then at the bare cupboards. "No wine? Have you been in want of money, father?" "I have not wanted for anything now that you are here," said the old man. "Yet," stammered Edmund, wiping the perspiration from his brow, "yet when I went away 3 months ago, I left you 200 francs. "True enough. But you forgot a little debt you owed to our neighbor Caderousse. He reminded me of it, and told me that if I did not pay it for you, he would go to the Monsieur Morel for the money. Fearing that that might do you harm, I paid it for you. But, cried Dante, I owed Caderousse 140 francs. Do you mean to say that you paid him the sum out of the 200 francs I left you? The old man nodded. So that you have lived for 3 months on 60 francs. You know that I require very little. May God forgive me, cried Edmund, throwing himself on his knees before his father. Nay, nay, said the old man with a quiet smile. Now that you are with me again, the past is all forgotten and all is well. Yes, said the young man, here I am with a little money in my pockets and a good future before me. Here, father, take some money, take some and send for something good to eat and drink. So saying, he emptied the contents of his pockets onto the table. 12 pieces of gold, 5 or 6 crowns, and some smaller coins. His father's face brightened. Whose is that? Said he. Mine. Yours. Ours. Take some, buy some provisions, and be happy, for we shall have some more tomorrow. Gently, gently, said the old man, smiling. If you don't mind, I shall spend your money warily. If people see me buying too many things at a time, they will think I have had to wait for your return before buying them. But hush. Here comes someone. It is Caderousse, who has no doubt heard of your arrival and has come to welcome you home. At that moment Caderousse entered. He was a man of 5 or 26, with a mass of black hair, and he carried in his hand a piece of cloth which, in his capacity of tailor, he was going to turn into a coat lining. So you have come back, Edmund, he said with strong Marseille accent, and with a broad smile that disclosed teeth as white as ivory. Yes, as you perceive, neighbor Caderousse, and ready to serve you in any way, Dante answered, but ill concealing his coldness by these civil words. Thank you. Happily I am not in need of anything. It is sometimes others who have need of my assistance. Dante made a slight movement. I don't mean that for you, boy. I lent you money and you returned it. That was but a neighborly action, and we are now quits. I'll let that cook for a second. Do 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 da 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 da. Fun times. Are all the pages like this? Come on now. We are on page 22. So it would seem. There we go. Yeah, do that. We are never quits with those who oblige us, said Dante. Okay. When we no longer owe them money, we owe them gratitude. Why speak of it? What is past is gone and done with. Let us talk of our happy return. Of your happy return. It would appear that you have had a stroke of luck and are already well in Monsieur Morel's good books. Monsieur Morel has always been very kind to me. In that case, you were wrong to refuse to dine with him. What? Refuse to dine with him? Exclaimed old Dante. So he asked you to dinner, did he? Yes, father, returned Edmund with a smile, because, you know, I wanted to come to you as soon as possible. I don't suppose your dear kind Monsieur Morel was overpleased at that, said Caderousse. And, of course, when a man aims at being captain, he mustn't offend his employer. You should butter him up a bit. Oh, I hope to be captain without doing that, replied Dante. Capital. That will please your old friends, and I know someone who won't be sorry to hear it. Do you mean Mercedes? Said the old man. Yes, Edmund replied, and now that I have seen you, father, and assured myself that you are well and want for nothing, I will ask your permission to leave you for a time. I am anxious to see Mercedes. Go, my son, go, said old Dante, and may God bless you in your wife as he has blessed me in my son. Edmund took leave of his father, nodded to Caderousse, and went out. Caderousse waited a few minutes, and then he also descended the stairs and joined Danglars, who had been waiting for him at the corner of Rue Senac. Well, said Danglars, did you see him? I have just left him, said Caderousse. Did he speak of his hopes of becoming captain? He spoke as if he were quite settled. As if it were quite settled. Patience, said Danglars. It seems to me he is in too much of a hurry. But I believe Monsieur Morrel has even promised him the captaincy. Pooh, said Danglars. He is not captain yet. He is still in love with the beautiful Catalan. Head over ears. He has just gone to see her. But if I am not greatly mistaken, there is a storm brewing in that direction. What do you mean? I do not know anything for certain, but I have seen things which make me think that the future captain will not have it all his own way up at Vieilles Infirmeries. What have you seen? Every time that Mercedes has come to town lately, she has been accompanied by a tall, gay young Catalan with black eyes and red complexion, who seems very attentive to her, and whom she addresses as cousin. Really? And do you think he is making love to her? I suppose so. What else would a man of 21 be doing with a beautiful young girl of 17? Ugh. And you say Dante has gone to the Catalans? He left before me. Let us go in the same direction. We can turn in at La Réserve and await events over a glass of wine. And that was not too bad. For science, yes, the wine. Wine heals everything, right? That's feels like a very European method to cure things. At least, I would say Greek, Italian, and French, for sure. Perhaps even a Portuguese way to heal all ills is drinking wine. I don't know, I'm pretty sure a cup of tea is the cure in both Ireland, Scotland, and England, now that I think about it. Anyway, I digress. So we're on to chapter 3. Chapter 3, The Catalans. About 100 paces from the spot where the two friends were sitting sipping their wine, the village of the Catalans rose behind a bare hill. Exposed to the fierce sun and swept by the biting northwest wind. One day a mysterious colony set out from Spain and landed on the narrow strip of land which they inhabit to this very day. No one knew whence they came or what tongue they spoke. One of their chiefs, who could speak a little Provençal, solicited from the commune of Marseille the bare and barren promontory on which they... the Provençal is like an old language of southern France. Today I learned. Solicited from the commune of Marseille the bare and barren promontory on which they, like the sailors of ancient times, had run their boats ashore. Their request was granted, and 3 months later, around the 12 or 15 boats which had brought these Bohemians from the sea, there arose a little village. This is the same village that we see today, constructed in an odd and picturesque fashion, half Moorish and half Spanish, inhabited by the descendants of these people, and speaking the language of their fathers. For 3 or 4 centuries, they remained faithful to the little promontory on which they had settled, like a flight of sea birds. They did not mix with the inhabitants of Marseille, but intermarried amongst their own folk, and preserved the customs and costumes of their original country, just as they preserved its language. We would ask our readers to follow us along the only street of this little hamlet and enter with us one of its tiny houses. A young and beautiful girl with hair as black as jet and eyes as velvety softness of the gazelle was standing leaning against the wall. 3 steps away, a young man of about 20 years of age was sitting, tilting his chair and leaning his elbow on an old, warm, worm-eaten piece of furniture. He was looking at the girl with an air which betrayed both vexation and uneasiness. His eyes questioned her, but the girl's firm and steady gaze checked him. Mercedes, said the young man, Easter is nearly round again, and it is just the right time for a wedding. Give me an answer, do. I have answered you 100 times, Fernand. I really think you must be your own enemy that you should ask me again. I have never encouraged you in your hopes, Fernand. You cannot reproach me with one coquettish look. I have always said to you, I am fond of you as a brother, but never ask anything more of me. My heart belongs to another. Haven't I always told you that, Fernand? Yes, I know, Mercedes. I know that you have always been cruelly frank with me, Fernand. Mercedes answered, shaking her head. A woman becomes a bad housekeeper and cannot even be sure of remaining a good wife when she loves another than her husband. Be satisfied with my friendship. Be satisfied with my friendship, for I repeat it once more, this is all I can promise you. Fernand rose from his seat, walked round the room, and returned to Mercedes, standing before her with scowling brows. Tell me once more, Mercedes, is this your final answer? I love Edmond Dantes, the girl answered coldly, and none other shall be my husband. You will always love him? As long as I live. Fernand bowed his head in defeat, heaving a sigh resembling a groan, and then suddenly, raising his head, hissed between his clenched teeth. But what if he is dead? If he is dead, I too shall die. But if he forgets you? Mercedes, cried the gladsome voice outside the door. Okay. Mercedes, cried the gladsome voice outside the door. Mercedes! Ah! The girl exclaimed, blushing with joy and love. You see, he has not forgotten me since here he is. And she ran toward the door, which she opened, calling, Here, Edmund, here I am. Fernand, pale and trembling, recoiled like a wayfarer at the sight of a snake, and finding a chair, sat down on it. Edmund and Mercedes fell into each other's arms. The fierce Marseille sun, which penetrated the room through the open door, covered them with a flood of light. At first they saw nothing around them. Let's turn that off there. My afternoon alarm. There we go. At first they saw nothing around them. Their intense happiness isolated them from the rest of the world. Suddenly, Edmund became aware of the gloomy countenance of Fernand peering out of the shadows, pale and menacing, and instinctively the young man put his hand to the knife at his belt. I beg your pardon, said Dantes. I did not perceive that there were 3 of us here. Then, turning to Mercedes, he asked, Who is this gentleman? He will be your best friend, Dantes, for he is my friend. He is my cousin Fernand, the man whom, after you, I love best in the world. Don't you recognize him? Ah, so it is, Edmund said, and still keeping Mercedes' hand clasped in his, he held the other one out in all friendliness to the Catalan. Instead, however, of responding to this show of cordiality, Ferdinand remained mute and motionless as a statue. Edmund cast an inquiring glance at the agitated and trembling Mercedes, and then at Fernand, who stood there gloomy and forbidding. This glance told him all, and his brow became suffused with anger. I did not hasten thus to your side to find an enemy here, Mercedes. An enemy, Mercedes cried, and with an angry look at her cousin. An enemy in my house, did you say, Edmund? You have no enemy here. Fernand, my brother is not your enemy. He will grasp your hand in token of devoted friendship. So saying, grab this real quick. So saying, Mercedes fixed the young Catalan with an imperious look, and as though mesmerized, he slowly approached Edmund and held out his hand. Like a powerless, though furious wave, his hatred had broken against the ascendancy which this girl exercised over him. But no sooner had he touched. My brain is like going over that line again. But no sooner had he touched Dante's hand that he felt he had done all that was within his power. He turned tail and fled out of the house. "Oh!" he cried out, running along like one demented and tearing his hair. "How can I get rid of this fellow, poor wretched fool that I am?" "Hey, Fernand, where are you running to?" a voice called out. The young man suddenly stopped, turned round, and perceived Caderousse seated at a table in an arbor of a tavern with Danglars. "Why don't you join us?" said Caderousse. "Are you in such a hurry that you cannot wait to pass the time of the day with your friends, especially when those friends have got a full bottle before them?" Danglars added. Fernand looked at the two men as though dazed, and answered not a word. Then he wiped away the perspiration that was coursing down his face, and slowly entered the arbor. The cool shade of the place seemed to restore him to calmness, and brought a feeling of relief to his exhausted body. He uttered a groan that was almost a sob, and let his head fall on his arms crossed on the table. "Shall I tell you what you look like, Fernand?" "Shall I tell you what you look like, Fernand?" said Caderousse, opening the conversation with that frank brutality which the lower classes show when their curiosity gets the upper hand of them. You look like a rejected lover." And he accompanied his little jest with a coarse laugh. "What are you saying?" said Danglars. "A man of his good looks is never unlucky in love. You've made a bad shot this time, Caderousse." "Not at all. Just listen to his sighs. Come, Fernand, raise your head and give us an answer. It is not polite to give no reply when friends inquire about your health." "I am quite well," said Fernand, without raising his head. There we go. "Ah, you see, Danglars," Caderousse said, winking at his friend, "this is how the land lies. Fernand, whom you see here, and who is one of the bravest and best of the Catalans, to say nothing of being one of the best fishermen in Marseille, is in love with a pretty girl called Mercedes. Unfortunately, however, this fair damsel appears to be in love with the mate of the Pharaon, and as the Pharaon put into port today, well, you understand." "No, I don't understand." "Poor Fernand has been given his congé, that's all." "Congé?" I'm not sure what a congé is. "Been given his congé, that's all." "And what about it?" said Fernand, raising his head and looking at Caderousse as if he would vent his anger on him. "Mercedes is tied to no man, and is free to love anyone she likes, isn't she?" "Of course, if you take it like that, it is quite different matter. It is quite a different matter. But I thought you were a Catalan, and I have always been told that a Catalan is not a man to be supplanted by a rival. It has It has even been said that Fernand is terrible in his vengeance. Poor fellow, Danglars exclaimed, pretending to feel a great pity for the young man. You see, he did not expect Dantès to return in this way without giving any warning. Perhaps he thought him dead or even faithless. When is the wedding to take place? Asked Caderousse. When is the wedding to take place? Asked Caderousse, on whom the fumes of the wine were beginning to take effect. The date is not yet fixed, Fernand mumbled. No, but it will be, as surely as Dantès will be captain of the Pharaon, Danglars? Danglars started at this unexpected attack, and turning toward Caderousse, scrutinized his face to try to detect whether this blow had been premeditated. He could read nothing, however, but envy on that drink-besotted face. "Ah, well," said he, filling the glasses, "let us drink to Captain Edmond Dantès, husband of the beautiful Catalane." Caderousse raised his glass to his mouth with a trembling hand, and emptied it at one gulp. Fernand took his glass and dashed it to the ground. "Look there!" hiccuped Caderousse. "What do I see on the top of the hill yonder near the Catalans? You have better sight than I, Fernand. Come and look. I believe my sight is beginning to fail me, and you know wine is treacherous. I seem to see two lovers walking side by side and clasping hands. Heaven forgive us. They have no idea we can see them, for they are actually kissing." Danglars did not lose one agonized expression on Fernand's face. "Do you know them, Monsieur Fernand?" he asked. "Yes," the latter answered in a husky voice. "It is Monsieur Edmond and Mademoiselle Mercédès." "You don't mean to say so," said Caderousse. "Fancy my not recognizing them. Hello, Dantès! Hello, fair damsel! Come here and tell us when the wedding is to be, for Monsieur Fernand is so obstinate that he won't say a word." "Be quiet," said Danglars, pretending to restrain Caderousse, who, with the tenacity of a drunkard, was leaning out of the arbor. "Try to stand up straight, and leave the lovers to their love-making. Now, look at Fernand. I don't know why I keep saying Fernand. Now, look at Fernand. He, at any rate, has got some sense." Danglars looked first at the one and then at the other of the two men, the one intoxicated with drink, the other mad with love. "I shall not get any further with these two fools," he murmured. "Dantès will certainly carry the day. He will marry that fair damsel, become captain, and have the laugh over us, unless—" A livid smile was seen to pass over his lips. "Unless I set to work." "Hello!" Caderousse continued to call out, half out of his seat and banging on the table. "Hi there! Edmond, don't you recognize your friends, or are you too proud to speak to them?" "No, my dear fellow, I am not proud, but I am in love, and I believe love is more apt to make one blind than pride is." "Bravo! A good excuse," Caderousse said. "Good day, Madame Dantès." Mercédès curtsied gravely and said, "That is not yet my name, and in my country it is looked upon as bringing bad luck when a girl is given her sweetheart's name before he has become her husband. Call me Mercédès, if you please." "I suppose your wedding will take place at once, Monsieur Dantès," said Danglars, bowing to the young couple. "As soon as possible, Monsieur Danglars. All the preliminaries will be arranged with my father today, and tomorrow or the day after, at the latest, we shall give the betrothal feast at Le Réserve here, at which we hope to see all our friends. You are invited, Monsieur Danglars, as also you, Caderousse, and you, of course, Fernand." Fernand opened his mouth in answer, but his voice died in his throat, and he could not say a single word. "The preliminaries today, tomorrow the betrothal feast." "To be sure, you are in a great hurry, Captain." "Danglars," Edmond said, smiling, "I repeat what Mercédès said to Caderousse just now. Do not give me the title that does not yet belong to me. It brings bad luck." I beg your pardon. I simply said that you seemed to be in a great hurry. Why, there's plenty of time. The Pharaon won't put out to sea for another 3 months. One is always in a hurry to be happy, Monsieur Danglars, for one has been suffering for a long time. For when one has been suffering for a long time, it is difficult to believe in one's good fortune. But it is not selfishness alone that prompts me to press this matter. I have to go to Paris. I have to go to Paris. You are going on business? Not on my own account. I have a last commission of Captain Leclerc's to execute. You understand, Danglars, it is sacred, but you can put your mind at rest. I shall go straight there and back again. Yes, yes, I understand, said Danglars aloud. Then to himself he said, Hey, Carmela, welcome in. Been a minute. I hope you're having a great day. Yes, yes, I understand, said Danglars aloud. Then to himself, to Paris? No doubt to deliver the letter that Marechal gave him. Better and better. This letter has given me an excellent idea. Ah, Dantes, my friend, you are not yet entered into the Pharaon's logbook as number 1. Then turning to Edmond, who was moving away, he called out, Bon voyage! Thank you, Edmond replied, turning round and giving him a friendly nod. Then the 2 lovers went on their way, peaceful and happy, like 2 of the elect on their way to heaven, while the 3 men continued their interesting conversations. Okay, so that was the first 3 chapters. We're at a point now where we can take a short break.
Before you dehydrate.
Oh, okay. One after another. Head pats, hydrate. Hello, welcome in, Yuki. You're having a good day, Carmela. That's great. You said you were going to be doing midterms. All the noms.
Don't forget
I have managed
to
to eat through all of my cheeses, so all I have left are grapes and tomatoes. Little bitty, teeny tiny tomatoes, the size of grapes. But they are not grape tomatoes. I don't know. I do. Okay, there we go. So, what else? What are we going to do here? I think we'll go ahead and read 3 more chapters. Let me get my snoozes out of the way. Just give us more breathing room. And then we might tap out for today. Just gonna see where we get in the next hour and a half. I think I'm ready to go. I hope everyone hydrated, used the restroom, and everyone is back to return to the story. Hey, Sloth, welcome in. Hi. Okay. Yes, excellent. I am doing heckin' good, as one adorable snow leopard baker would say. Let's see. We are on to chapter 4. The Betrothal Feast. Happy heckin' time zone. The next day was gloriously fine. The sun rose red and resplendent, its first rays tinting the fleecy clouds with many delicate and brilliant hues. The festive board had been prepared in a large room at La Réserve, with whose arbor we are already acquainted. There we go. Although the meal was fixed for noon, the tavern had been filled with impatient guests since 11 o'clock. They consisted chiefly of some of the favored sailors of the Pharaon and several soldier friends of Dante's. In order to do honor to the happy couple, they had all donned their finest clothes. To crown all, M. Morel had determined to favor the occasion with his presence, and on his arrival he was greeted with hearty cheers from the sailors of the Pharaon. Their owner's presence was to them a confirmation of the report that Dantes was to be their captain, and as he was popular with them all, they wished to show their owner by this means their appreciation of the fact that, by a stroke of good luck, his choice coincided with their own wishes on the subject. Danglars and Caderousse were immediately dispatched to inform the bridegroom of the arrival of this important personage, whose entrance had caused such a sensation, and to bid him make haste. They had barely gone 100 yards when they perceived the small bridal party approaching. It was composed of the betrothed pair, 4 maids in attendance on the bride, and Dante's father, who walked beside Mercedes. Fernand walked behind, wearing an evil smile. Neither Edmond nor Mercedes noticed this evil smile. They were so happy that they had eyes only for each other, and for the beautiful blue sky whence they hoped would come a blessing on their union. Welcome in, Yukichi. Having acquitted themselves of their errand, the 2 ambassadors shook hands amicably with Edmond. And while Danglars took his place beside Fernand, Caderousse joined old Dantès, who was the object of general attention as he walked along, supporting himself on his curiously carved stick. He was attired in his best black suit, adorned with large steel buttons beautifully cut in facets. His thin but still vigorous legs were arrayed in a pair of beautifully embroidered stockings, which had obviously been smuggled from England. Long blue and white streamers flowed from his 3-cornered hat. Dantes himself was simply clad, as he belonged to the mercantile marine. His uniform was half military and half civilian, and with his good-looking face, radiant with joy and happiness, a more perfect specimen of manly beauty could scarcely be imagined. As the bridal party came in sight of La Réserve, M. Morel advanced to meet them, followed by the soldiers and sailors and other guests. Dantes at once withdrew his arm from his betrothed and placed Mercedes' arm respectfully in that of his patron. The shipowner and the blushing girl that led the way up the wooden steps to the room where the feast was prepared. For fully 5 minutes, the boards creaked and groaned under the unwonted pressure of the many steps. No sooner were they seated than the dishes were handed round. Arlese sausages, brown of meat and piquant of flavor, lobsters and prawns and brilliant red shells, sea urchins whose prickly exteriors resemble chestnuts just fallen from the trees, cockles esteemed by the epicure of the south as surpassing the oyster of the north. In fact, every delicacy which the sea washes up onto the sandy beach, and which the fishermen call sea fruit. What a silent party, old Dantes remarked, as he caught a whiff of the fragrant yellow wine that old Pamphile himself had just put before Mercedes. Who would think there are 30 light-hearted and merry people assembled here? A husband is not always light-hearted, Caderousse replied. The fact is, said Dantes, at the present moment I am too happy to be gay. If that is what you mean by your remark, neighbor Caderousse, you are quite right. Joy has that peculiar effect that at times it oppresses us just as much as grief. Danglars looked at Fernand, whose impressionable nature was keenly alive to every emotion. "Well, I never," said he. "Are you anticipating trouble? It seems to me you have everything you can desire." "That is just what alarms me," said Dantès. "I cannot help thinking it is not man's lot to attain happiness so easily. Good fortune is like the palaces of the enchanted isles, the gates of which were guarded by dragons. Happiness could only be obtained by overcoming these dragons, and I know not how I have deserved the honor of becoming Mercédès' husband." "Husband?" said Caderousse, laughing. "Nay, captain, not yet. Act towards her as if you were husband, and you will see how she will like it." Mercédès blushed, but made no reply. Fernand grew very restless. He started at every sound. Hmm. Fernand grew very restless. He started at every sound, and from time to time wiped away the perspiration that gathered on his brow like large drops of rain, the precursors of a storm. "Upon my word, neighbor Caderousse, it is hardly worth while taking notice of such a little slip on my part," Dantès said. "'Tis true that Mercédès is not yet my wife, but—" Here he pulled out his watch. "She will be in an hour and a half. Yes, my friends, thanks to the influence of Monsieur Morrel, to whom, after my father, I owe all I possess, every difficulty has been removed. We have got a special license, and at 2:30 the mayor of Marseille will be awaiting us at the Hôtel de Ville. As it has just struck 1:15, I think I am quite right in saying that in another hour and 30 minutes Mercédès will have changed her name to Madame Dantès." Fernand closed his eyes, for they gave him a burning pain. He leant against the table to save himself from falling, but in spite of his effort he could not restrain a groan, which, however, was lost amid the noisy congratulations of the company. "This feast, then, is not in honor of your betrothal, as we supposed, but is your wedding breakfast?" "Not at all," said Dantès. "I leave for Paris tomorrow morning. 4 days to go, 4 days to return, 1 day to execute my commission, and I shall be back again on the 1st of March. We will have our real wedding breakfast the very next day." At this moment Danglars noticed that Fernand, on whom he had kept an observant eye, and who was seated at the window overlooking the street, suddenly opened his haggard eyes, rose with a convulsive movement, and staggered back on to his seat. Almost at the same moment a confused noise was heard on the stairs. The tread of heavy steps and the hubbub of many voices, together with the clanking of swords and military accoutrements, drowned the merry voices of the bridal party. The laughter died away, and ominous silence fell on all as the noise drew nearer. And when 3 peremptory knocks resounded on the door, they looked at each other with uneasy glances. "Open in the name of the law!" cried a peremptory voice. There was no answer. The door opened, and a police commissary entered. Commissary? No, commissary. Yeah, okay. The door opened, and a police commissary entered, followed by 4 armed soldiers and a corporal. "What is all this about?" the shipowner asked, advancing toward the commissary, whom he knew. "I fear there must be some mistake." "If there is a mistake, Monsieur Morrel," the commissary replied, "you may rest assured that it will be promptly put right. In the meantime, I am the bearer of a warrant for arrest, and, though I regret the task assigned to me, it must nevertheless be carried out. Which of you gentlemen answers to the name Edmond Dantès?" Every eye was turned on the young man as he stepped forward, obviously agitated, but with great dignity of bearing, and said, "I do, monsieur. What do you want of me?" "Edmond Dantès, I arrest you in the name of the law." "You arrest me?" said Dantès, changing color. "Why, I pray?" "I know not, monsieur. Your first examination will give you all the information on that score." Resistance was useless, but old Dantes did not comprehend this. There are certain things the heart of a father or a mother will never understand. He threw himself at the officer's feet and begged and implored, but his tears and supplications were of no avail. "There is no call for alarm, monsieur," the commissary said at last, touched by the old man's despair. "Perhaps your son has but neglected to carry out some customs formality or health regulation, in which case he will probably be released as soon as he has given the desired information." In the meantime, Dantes, with a smile on his face, had shaken hands with all his friends and surrendered himself to the officer, saying, "Do not be alarmed. You may depend on it there is some mistake which will probably be cleared up even before I reach the prison." "To be sure, I am ready to vouch for your innocence," Danglars said, as he joined the group round the prisoner. Dantes descended the stairs, preceded by the police officer and surrounded by soldiers. A carriage stood at the door. He got in, followed by 2 soldiers and the commissary. The door was shut, and the carriage took to the road back to Marseille. "Goodbye, Edmund! Oh, my Edmund, goodbye!" Mercedes called out, leaning over the balcony. The prisoner heard these last words sobbed from his sweetheart's breast, and putting his head out of the window, simply called out, "Au revoir, my Mercedes." The carriage then disappeared round the corner of Fort St. Nicholas. "Await me here," M. Morrel said to the rest of the party. "I shall take the first carriage I can find to take me to Marseille, and shall bring you back news." "Yes, do go," they all cried out. "Go and come back with all possible speed." The guests, who had been making merry but a short time before, now gave way to a feeling of terror. They feverishly discussed their arrest. From every point of view, Danglars was loud in his assertion that it was merely a trifling case of suspected smuggling. The customs officials had been aboard the Pharaon during their absence, and something had aroused their suspicion. M., the purser, was sure of it. But Mercedes felt, rather than knew, that the arrest had some deeper significance. She suddenly gave way to a wild fit of sobbing. "Come, come, my child, do not give up hope," said old Dantes, hardly knowing what he was saying. "Hope?" repeated Danglars. Fernand also tried to repeat this word of comfort, but it seemed to choke him. His lips moved, but no word came from them. "A carriage, a carriage!" cried one of the guests, who had stayed on the balcony on the lookout. "It is Monsieur Morrel. Cheer up, he is no doubt bringing us good news." Mercedes and the old father rushed out to the door to meet the ship owner. The latter entered, looking very grave. "My friends," he said with a gloomy shake of the head, "it is far more serious matter than we supposed." "Oh, Monsieur Morrel," Mercedes exclaimed, "I know he is innocent." "I also believe in his innocence," replied the ship owner, "but he is accused of being an agent of the Bonapartist faction." Those of my readers who are well acquainted with the period of my story must be aware of the gravity of such an announcement. Consternation and dismay were written on the faces of the assembled guests as the party silently and sadly broke up. Fernand, who had now become the horror-stricken girl's only protector, led her home, while some of Edmund's friends took charge of the broken-hearted father, and it was soon rumored in the town that Dantes had been arrested as a Bonapartist agent. Would you have believed it, Danglars?" M. Morrel asked, as he hastened to the town with his purser and Caderousse, in the hopes of receiving direct news of Edmund through his acquaintance, M. de Villefort, the deputy of the Procureur du Roi. "Why, monsieur, you may perhaps remember I told you that Dantes anchored off the Isle of Elba without any apparent reason. I had my suspicions at the time." "Did you mention these suspicions to anyone but myself?" "God forbid!" exclaimed Danglars, and then in a low whisper he added, "You know, monsieur, that on account of your uncle, who served under the old government and does not attempt to hide his feelings, you are also suspected of sympathizing with Napoleon. So if I mentioned my suspicions, I should be afraid of injuring not only Edmund, but you also." There are certain things it is the duty of a subordinate to tell his master, but to conceal from everyone else. Quite right, Danglars. You are a good fellow. I had not forgotten your interest in the event of poor Dante's becoming captain. In what respect, monsieur? I asked Dantes to give me his opinion of you and to say whether he would have any objection to your retaining your post, for it seemed to me that I had noticed a certain coolness between you two of late. What answer did he give you? He merely referred to some personal grievance he had against you, but said that any person who enjoyed his master's confidence was also sure of his. The hypocrite! Danglars muttered. Poor Dantes, said Caderousse. He's the right sort, and that's a fact. Quite agreed, said M. Morrel. Monsieur, I'm just going to say Monsieur Morrel. But in the meantime, the Pharaon is captainless. We cannot put to sea for another 3 months, Danglars added, and it is to be hoped that Dantes will be released before then. No doubt, but in the meantime, I am at your service, you know, that I am a captain of managing a ship the most experienced captain. Then when Dantes comes out of prison, he can take his post and I will resume mine. Thanks, Danglars. That would be a way out of the difficulty. I therefore authorize you to assume command of the Pharaon and superintend the loading of the cargo. No matter what misfortune befalls any of us, we cannot let business suffer. So saying, he proceeded in the direction of the law courts. So far everything is succeeding wonderfully, Danglars said to himself. I'm already temporary captain, and if that fool of a Caderousse can be persuaded to hold his tongue, I shall soon have the job for good and all. What a piece of bleep! Yeah, big bleep. Big piece of bleep. Oh my goodness. Danglars is taking his post. Fernand is taking his fiancée. And Caderousse, I don't know. He seems to be kind of ambivalent about the whole thing. All right. We shall continue with chapter 5.
Hydrate before you dihydrate.
Yes. You got it, Hawk. I'll drink. More water. Water. Water bottle, right? We're on to chapter 5. The deputy procureur du Roi. In one of the old mansions built by Puget in the Rue du Grand Cours, opposite the fountain of the Medusa, another betrothal feast was being celebrated on the same day, and at the same hour as that which took place in the humble inn. There was, however, a great difference in the company present. Instead of members of the working class and soldiers and sailors, there was to be seen the flower of Marseille society, former magistrates who had resigned their office under the usurper's reign, old officers who had deserted their posts to join Condé's army. The Prince of Condé led an unsuccessful royalist uprising against Napoleon. Interesting. Young men in whom their families had kindled a hatred for the man whom 5 years of exile were to convert into a martyr and 15 years of restoration into a demigod. The guests were still at table. Their heated and excitable conversation betrayed the passions of the period, passions which in the South had been so much more terrible and unrestrained during the past 5 years, since religious hatred had been added to political hatred. The emperor, king of the Isle of Elba, after having held sovereign sway over 1/2 of the world, now reigning over 5,000 or 6,000 souls, after having heard "Long live Napoleon," uttered by 120 million subjects, and in 10 different languages. The emperor was regarded as a man that was lost to the throne of France forever. The magistrates recounted political blunders. The military officers discussed Moscow and Leipzig, which I guess are the 2 greatest defeats he had up to that time. The ladies aired their views on his divorce from Josephine, which was his empress, whom he crowned in 1804 and divorced in 1809. Very short time to be married. It was not in the downfall of the man that these royalists rejoiced and gloried, but rather in the annihilation of the principle, for it seemed to them that they were awakening from a dreadful nightmare, and were about to enter upon a new life. An old man, the Marquis of Saint-Méran, wearing the cross of Saint Louis, rose and proposed the health of King Louis XVIII. The toast, recalling the exiled but peace-loving King of France, elicited an enthusiastic and almost poetic response. Glasses were raised after the English fashion, and the ladies, taking their bouquets from their dresses, strewed the table with flowers. Ah.
Deicide_King447.
Welcome in, Deicide King. Thank you for the follow. Ah, said the Marquis de Saint-Méran, a woman with a forbidding eye, thin lips, and an aristocratic and elegant bearing despite her 50 years. If those revolutionists were here who drove us out of our old castles, which they bought for a mere song, and in which we left them to conspire against each other during the reign of terror, they would have to own that true devotion was on our side. We attached ourselves to a crumbling monarchy. They, on the contrary, worshipped the rising sun and made their fortunes, while we lost all we possessed. They would be compelled to own that our king was truly Louis the well-beloved to us, while their usurper has never been more to them than Napoleon the accursed. Don't you agree with me, de Villefort? What did you say, madame? I must crave your pardon. I was not listening to the conversation. Leave the young people alone, interposed the old gentleman who had proposed the toast. They are thinking of their approaching wedding, and naturally they are more interesting subjects of conversation than politics. I am sorry, mother, said a beautiful, fair-haired girl with eyes of velvet, floating in a pool of mother-of-pearl. I will give up Monsieur de Villefort to you, and I have been monopolizing him for some few minutes. That sentence. Monopolizing him for some few minutes. Monsieur de Villefort, my mother is speaking to you. I am at your service, madame. If you would be kind enough to repeat your question, M. de Villefort said. You're forgiven, Renee, said the Marquis with a smile of tenderness. Marquis? Is it a Marquis? Marquis would be, I think. Okay, said the Marquis with a smile of tenderness that one hardly expected to see on that dry, hard face. I was saying, Villefort, that the Bonapartists had neither our conviction, nor our enthusiasm, nor our devotion. No, madame, but they had fanaticism to take the place of all those other virtues. Napoleon is the Mahomet, or similar to Muhammad, of the West. To all those plebeian but highly ambitious people, he is not only a legislator and a master, he is a type, the personification of equality. Equality, exclaimed the Marquis. Napoleon, the personification of equality. Do you know, Villefort, that what you say has a very strong revolutionary flavor? But I excuse you. One cannot expect the son of Girondin, I guess. The son of a Girondin, which is, during the French Revolution, the moderate Girondins opposed the radical Jacobins. There we go. The son of a Girondins, to be quite free from a spice of the old leaven. A deep crimson suffused the countenance of Villefort. It is true that my father was a Girondin, madame, but he did not vote for the king's death. My father was an equal sufferer with yourself during the reign of terror, and he well nigh lost his head on the same scaffold which saw your father's head fall. True, said the Marquis, but they would have mounted the scaffold for reasons diametrically opposed. The proof being that whereas my family have all adhered to the exiled princes, your father lost no time in rallying to the new government, and that after citizen Notiers had been a Girondin, Count Notier became a senator. Mother, said Renee, you know we agreed not to discuss such painful reminiscences any more. I quite agree with Mademoiselle de Saint-Méran, said de Villefort replied. For my own part, I have discarded not only the views, but also the name of my father. My father has been, and possibly still is, a Bonapartist, and bears the name of Notier. I am a royalist, and style myself de Villefort. Well said, Villefort, the Marquis replied. I have always urged the Marquis. Yeah, okay. Marquis, there we go. I have always urged the Marquis to forget the past, but I have never been able to prevail upon her to do so. I hope you will be more fortunate than I. Very well, then, the Marquis rejoined. Let it be agreed that we forget the past. But, Villefort, should a conspirator fall into your hands, remember there will be so many more eyes watching you, since it is known that you come of a family which is perhaps in league with the conspirators. Alas, Madame, Villefort replied, my profession, and especially the times in which we live, compel me to be severe. I have already had several political prosecutions which have given me the opportunity of proving my convictions. Unfortunately, we have not yet done with such offenders. Don't you think so? The Marquis inquired. I am afraid not. Napoleon on the Isle of Elba is very near to France. His presence there, almost in view of our coasts, stimulates the hopes of his partisans. At this moment a servant entered and whispered something into his ear. Villefort, excusing himself, left the table, returning a few minutes later. Renee, he said, as he looked tenderly at his betrothed, who would have a lawyer for her husband? I have no moment to call my own. I am even called away from my betrothal feast. Why are you called away? The girl asked anxiously. Alas, if I am to believe what they tell me, I have to deal with a grave charge which may very well lead to the scaffold. How dreadful! cried Renee, turning pale. It appears that a little Bonapartist plot has been discovered, Villefort continued. Here is the letter of denunciation, and he read as follows. The Procureur du Roi is hereby informed by a friend to the throne and into religion that a certain Edmond Dantes, mate on the Pharaon, which arrived this morning from Smyrna, after having touched at Naples and Porto Ferrajo, has been entrusted by Joachim Murat, a general under Napoleon and later King of Naples, with a letter for the usurper, and by the usurper with a letter for the Bonapartist party in Paris. Corroboration of this crime can be found on arresting him, for the said letter will be found either on him or at his father's house, or in his cabin on board the Pharaon. But, Renee said, this letter is addressed to the Procureur du Roi, Attorney General, and not to you, and is moreover anonymous. You are right, but the Procureur du Roi is absent, so the letter has been handed to his secretary, who has been instructed to open all correspondence. On opening this one, he sent for me, and not finding me, gave orders for the man's arrest. Then the culprit is already arrested, the Marquis said.
Solar Labyrinth just
Welcome
followed.
in, Solar Labyrinth. Thank you for the follow. Then the culprit is already arrested, the Marquis said. You mean the accused person, Murnay made answer. Then, turning to Villefort, where is the unfortunate man? He is at my house. Then away, my dear boy, said the Marquis. Do not neglect your duty in order to stay with us. Go where the king's service calls you. That wasn't so bad. Let's see here. Give me a second. Big stretch. Yep, and hydrate. Good plan. Okay. So we are on to chapter 6. And unless... Check this real quick. Okay. The next chapter is about 10 pages, so we should be able to read that. I think we'll be able to read through the next 3 chapters in the next, give or take. Because we're on to chapter 6. Yeah. So 6 and 7 for sure, and I'm not sure. That we can definitely knock those out in the next hour. And then we'll start looking for someone to go raid into. Okay. What do we got here? Okay. So chapter 6. The examination. Villefort had no sooner left the room than he discarded his jaunty manner and assumed the grave air of a man called upon to decide upon the life of his fellow man. In reality, however, apart from the line of politics which his father had adopted, and which might influence his future if he did not separate himself altogether from him, Gerard de Villefort was at this moment as happy as it is given to any man to be, already rich, and although only 27 years of age, occupying a high position on the bench, he was about to marry a young and beautiful girl, whom he loved, not passionately, it is true, but with calculation as befits a future procureur du roi. For in addition to her beauty, which was remarkable, Mademoiselle de Saint-Méran, his betrothed, belonged to one of the most influential families of the period, and furthermore had a dowry of 50,000 crowns, besides the prospect of inheriting another 500,000. At the door, he met the commissary of police, who was waiting for him. The sight of this man brought him from his 7th heaven down to earth. He composed his face, and advancing toward the officer, said, "Here I am, monsieur. I have read the letter. You were quite right in arresting this man. Now give me all the information you have discovered about him and the conspiracy." "As yet we know nothing about the conspiracy, monsieur. All the papers found on the man have been sealed and placed on your desk. You have seen by the letter denouncing him that the prisoner is a certain Edmond Dantès, first mate of the 3 Master Ferron, trading in cotton with Alexandria and Smyrna, and belonging to Morel and Sons of Marseille. Did he serve in the navy before he joined the mercantile marine? Oh no, monsieur, he is too young. He is only 19 or 20 at the most." At this moment, just as Villefort had arrived at the corner of Rue des Concierges, a man, who seemed to be waiting for him, approached. It was M. Morel. Ah, Monsieur de Villefort, he cried, I am very fortunate in meeting you. A most extraordinary and unaccountable mistake has been made. The mate of my ship, a certain Edmond Dantes, has just been arrested. I know, Villefort made answer, and I am on my way to examine him. Oh, monsieur, M. Morrel continued, carried away by his friendship for the young man, you do not know the accused, but I do. He is the gentlest and most trustworthy man imaginable, and I don't hesitate to say he is the best seaman in the whole mercantile service. Oh, Monsieur de Villefort, with all my heart I commend him to your kindly consideration. You may rest assured, monsieur, that you will not have appealed to me in vain if the prisoner is innocent, but if, on the contrary, he is guilty. We live in a difficult age, monsieur, when it would be a fatal thing to be lenient. In that case, I shall be compelled to do my duty. As he had just arrived at his own house beside the law courts, he entered with a lordly air, after having saluted with icy politeness the unhappy shipowner, who stood petrified on the spot where Villefort had left him. The antechamber was full of gendarmes and policemen, and in their midst stood the prisoner carefully guarded. Villefort crossed the room, threw a glance at Dantes, and after taking a packet of papers from one of the gendarmes, disappeared. His first impression of the young man was favorable, but he had been warned so often against trusting first impulses that he applied the maxim to the term impression, forgetting the difference between the two words. He therefore stifled the feelings of pity that were uppermost in his heart, assumed the expression which he reserved for important occasions, and sat down at his desk with a frown on his brow. Bring in the prisoner. An instant later, Dantes was before him, saluting his judge with an easy politeness. He looked round for a seat as if he were in M. Morrel's drawing-room. "Who are you, and what is your name?" asked Villefort, as he fingered the papers which he received from the police officer on his entry. "My name is Edmond Dantes," replied the young man calmly. "I am mate of the Pharaon, owned by Messieurs Morel and Son." "Your age?" continued Villefort. 19. "What were you doing when you were arrested?" "I was at my betrothal breakfast, monsieur," the young man said, and his voice trembled slightly as he thought of the contrast between those happy moments and the painful ordeal he was now undergoing. "You were at your betrothal feast," the deputy said, shuddering in spite of himself. "Yes, monsieur. I am about to marry a woman I have loved for 3 years." Villefort, impassive though he usually was struck with this coincidence, and the passionate voice of Dantes, who had been seized in the midst of his happiness, touched a sympathetic chord in his own heart. He also was about to be married. He also was happy, and his happiness had been interrupted in order that he might kill the happiness of another. "Now, I want all the information in your possession," he said. "Have you served under the usurper?" "I was about to be drafted into the Marines when he fell." "I have been told you have extreme political views," said Villefort, who had never been told anything of the kind, but was not sorry to put forward the statement in the form of an accusation. "Extreme political views? Monsieur, alas! I am almost ashamed to say it, but I have never
Don't
had
forget
what
to
one calls
stretch.
a view." "Okay, you got it. Big stretch." Okay. "But I have never had what one calls a view. I am barely 19 years of age, as I've already had the honor to tell you. I know nothing, for I am not destined to play any great rôle in life. The little I am and ever shall be, if I am given the position I desire, I owe to Monsieur Morel. My opinions, I do not say political, but private, are limited to these 3 sentiments. I love my father, I respect Monsieur Morel, and I adore Mercédès. That, monsieur, is all I have to tell you. You see for yourself that it is not very interesting." As Dantes spoke, Villefort looked at his genial and frank countenance, and with his experience of crime and criminals, He recognized that every word Dantes spoke convinced him of his innocence. In spite of Villefort's severity, Edmund had not once expressed in his looks, his words, or his gestures anything but kindness and respect for his interrogator. "This is indeed a charming young man," Villefort said to himself, but aloud he said, "Have you any enemies?" "Enemies, monsieur? My position is happily not important enough to make me any enemies. As regards to my character, I am perhaps too hasty, but I always try to curb my temper in my dealings with my subordinates. I have 10 or 12 sailors under me. If you ask them, monsieur, you will find that they love and respect me, not as a father, for I am too young, but as an elder brother. Perhaps you have no enemies, but you may have aroused feelings of jealousy. At the early age of 19, you are about to receive a captaincy. You are going to marry a beautiful girl who loves you. These two pieces of good fortune may have been the cause of envy." "You are right. No doubt you understand men better than I do, and possibly it is so. But if any of my friends cherish any such envious feelings towards me, I would rather not know, lest my friendship should turn into hatred. You are wrong. You should always strive to see clearly around you, and indeed you seem such a worthy young man that I am going to depart from the ordinary rule by showing you the denunciation which has brought you before me. Here is the paper. Do you recognize the writing?" So saying, Villefort took the letter from his pocket and handed it to Dantes. Dantes looked at it and read it. His brow darkened as he said, "No, monsieur, I do not know this writing. It is disguised, and yet it is very plainly written." "Hi, Windy. Welcome in." "It is disguised, and yet it is very plainly written. At any rate, it is a clever hand that wrote it. I am very lucky," he continued, looking at Villefort with an expression of gratitude, "in having you to examine me, for there can be no doubt that this envious person is indeed my enemy." And the light that shone in the man's eyes as he said this revealed to Villefort how much energy and deep feeling lay concealed beneath his apparent gentleness. "Very well, then," said the deputy. "Answer me quite frankly, not as a prisoner before his judge, but as a man in a false position to another man who has his interest at heart. What truth is there in this anonymous accusation?" "It is partly true and partly false, monsieur. Here is the plain truth. I swear it by my honor as a sailor, by my love for Mercedes, and by my father's life. When we left Naples, Captain Leclerc fell ill of brain fever. As we had no doctor on board, and as he would not put in at any port since he was very anxious to reach Elba, he became so very ill that towards the end of the 3rd day, feeling that he was dying, he called me to him. 'My dear Dantes,' he said, 'swear to me on your honor that you will do what I bid you, for it is a matter of the utmost importance.' 'I swear it, Captain,' I said. 'After my death the command of the ship devolves upon you as mate. Take command. Head for the Isle of Elba. Go ashore at Porto Ferrajo. Ask for the Marechal, and give him this letter. You may be given another letter and be entrusted with a mission. That mission was to have been mine, Dantes, but you will carry it out in my stead and get all the glory of it. I shall carry out your instructions, Captain, but perhaps I shall not be admitted into the Marechal's presence as easily as you think. Here is a ring, which will give you the admittance and remove all difficulties.' He then gave me a ring. It was only just in time. 2 hours later he was delirious, and the next day he died. What did you do then? What I was bound to do, and what everyone would have done in my place. In any circumstances the requests of a dying man are sacred, but with a sailor a superior's request is an order that has to be carried out. So I headed for Elba, where I arrived the next day. I gave orders for everybody to remain on board while I went ashore alone. The ring gained admittance for me to the Marechal's presence. He asked me about poor Captain Leclerc's death, and gave me a letter which he charged me to deliver in person at an address in Paris. I gave him my promise in accordance with the last request of my captain. I landed here, rapidly settled all the ship's business, and hastened to my betrothed, whom I found more beautiful and loving than ever. Finally, monsieur, I was partaking of my betrothal feast, was to have been married in an hour, and was counting on going to Paris tomorrow, when, owing to this denunciation, which you seem to treat as lightly as I do, I was arrested. I believe you have told me the truth, was Villefort's answer, and if you have been guilty, it is through imprudence, and imprudence justified by your captain's orders. Hand me the letter that was given you at Elba. Give me your word of honor that you will appear directly you are summoned to do so. And you may rejoin your friends. I am free, monsieur? Dantes cried out, overcome with joy. Certainly, but first give me the letter. It must be in front of you, monsieur. I was taken along with my papers, and I recognize some of them in the bundle. Wait a moment, the deputy said as Dantes was taking his hat and gloves. To whom was it addressed? To Monsieur Noirtier, Rue Coq Heron, Paris. These words fell on Villefort's ears with the rapidity and unexpectedness of a thunderbolt. He sank into his chair from which he had risen to reach the packet of letters, drew the fatal letter from the bundle, and glanced over it with a look of inexpressible terror. Monsieur Noirtier, Rue Coq Heron, number 13, he murmured, growing paler and paler. Have you shown this letter to anyone? To no one, monsieur, on my honor. Villefort's brow darkened more and more. When he had finished reading the letter, his head fell into his hands, and he remained thus for a moment quite overcome. After a while he composed himself and said, You say you do not know the contents of this letter. On my honor, monsieur, I am in complete ignorance of its contents. Dantes waited for the next question, but no question came. Villefort again sank into his chair, passed his hand over his brow, dripping with perspiration, and read the letter for the third time. Oh, if he should know the contents of this letter, he murmured, and if he ever gets to know that Noirtier is the father of Villefort, I am lost, lost forever. Villefort made a violent effort to pull himself together and said in as steady a voice as possible, I cannot set you at liberty at once as I had hoped. I must first consult the judge d'instruction, which is the presiding judge of a grand jury. You see how I have tried to help you, but I must detain you a prisoner for some time longer. I will make that time as short as possible. The principal charge against you has to do with this letter, and you see... Villefort went to the fire, threw the letter into the flames, and remained watching it until it was reduced to ashes. You see, he continued, I have destroyed it. Oh, monsieur, Dantes exclaimed, you are more than just, you are kindness itself. But listen, Villefort went on, after what I have done, you feel you have confidence in me, don't you? I only wish to advise you. I shall keep you here until this evening, possibly. Someone else will come to examine you. In that event, repeat all that you have told me, but say not a word about this letter. I promise, monsieur. You understand, he continued, the letter is destroyed, and you and I alone know of its existence. Should you be questioned about it, firmly deny all knowledge of it, and you are saved. Villefort rang, and the commissary entered. The deputy whispered a few words into his ear, and the officer nodded in answer. Follow the commissary, Villefort said to Dantes. Dantes bowed, cast a look of gratitude at Villefort, and did as he was bid. The door was hardly closed when Villefort's strength failed him, and he sank, half fainting, into his chair. After a few moments he muttered to himself, Alas, alas, if the Procureur du Roi had been here, if the Judge d'instruction had been called instead of me, I should have been lost. This little bit of paper would have spelt my ruin. Oh, father, father, will you always stand in the way of my happiness in this world? And must I eternally fight against your past? Suddenly, an unexpected light appeared to flash across his mind, illuminating his whole face. A smile played around his drawn mouth, and his haggard eyes became fixed as though arrested by a thought. The very thing, he said. Yes, This letter, which was to have spelt my ruin, will probably make my fortune. Quick to work, Villefort." And after having assured himself that the prisoner had left the antechamber, the deputy hastened to the house of his betrothed. Oh dear. All right. We're on to one final chapter, and then we'll be wrapping up for today. So, all right, we're doing chapter 7. The Chateau d'If. D'If? 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 D'If. D'If. I think. D'If, maybe. The Chateau d'If. As he passed through the antechamber, the commissary of police made a sign to 2 gendarmes, who instantly placed themselves on either side of Dantes. A door communicating with the law courts was opened. They passed down one of those long, dark passages which make all those who enter them give an involuntary shudder. It was the same way as Villefort's chambers communicated with the law courts. The law courts communicated with the prison, that somber edifice overlooking the clock tower of the Écoles. D'If or not d'If? That is the question. I'm finally reading the book. I hope you're happy. This has been a long time in coming. They wound their way along the passage, and at last they came to a door. The commissary knocked on it thrice with an iron knocker, and it seemed to Dantes as if each blow had been aimed at his heart. The door was opened. The gendarmes gave their hesitating prisoner a push forward. Dantes crossed the formidable threshold, and the door closed behind him with a loud bang. He now breathed a different air, a thick and mephitic air. He was in a prison. His cell was clean enough, though it was barred and bolted, and its appearance did not fill him with any dread. Why should it? The words of the deputy, who seemed to show so much interest in him, rang in his ears like a sweet promise of hope. It was 4 o'clock when Dantes was taken to his cell, and it was the 1st of March. The prisoner soon found himself in utter darkness, with loss of sight. His hearing became more acute. At the least sound he rose quickly and advanced toward the door in the firm conviction that they had come to set him free. But the noise died away.
Zeppelin_VT just followed.
Welcome in, Zeppelin. I hope you're doing well. But the noise died away in another direction, and Dantes sank back onto his stool. At last, about 10 o'clock, when Dantes was beginning to lose all hope, he heard steps approaching his door. A key was turned in the lock. The bolts creaked. The massive oak door swung open, and a dazzling light from 2 torches flooded the cell. Welcome in, Curious. I hope you're doing well. Yes, totally a classic. Here, let me do a Curious. Do a quick shout out for Curious. So if you guys are not familiar with the Curious one, he too is another he's a reader, he is a gamer, chill vibes, really chill vibes, a little Eldritch Horror-esque, in that he is I guess an alternate plane creature, I would say. We do like our chill vibes, but yeah. The Curious One, he's a very intriguing VTuber. He invites you to ponder life's mysteries with him. It looks like you opened a booster box and are a metaphor for the complexities of existence. And I agree, their stream does promise a delightful blend of play and profound questioning and deeper thought. So go check them out. If you're not already following, be sure to check out Curious One. By the light of these torches, Dante saw the glittering swords and carbines of 4 gendarmes. Have you come to fetch me? Dantes asked. Yes, was the answer of one of the men. By order of the deputy? I should say so. Very well, said Dantes. I am ready to follow you. In the belief that they came at the deputy's orders, Dantes, relieved of all apprehension, calmly stepped forward and placed himself in their midst. A police van was waiting at the door, the coachman was on the box, and a police officer was seated beside him. The door of the carriage was opened, and Dantes was pushed in. He had neither the power nor the intention to resist, and he found himself in an instant seated between 2 gendarmes, the other 2 taking their places opposite, and the heavy van lumbered away. The prisoner glanced at the windows. They were grated. He had but changed his prison, only this one moved and was conveying him he knew not whither. Through the grating, the bars of which were so close that there was barely a hand's breadth between them, Dantes recognized the Rue Casserie and saw that they were passing along the Rue Saint-Laurent and the Rue Taramis towards the quay. Soon he saw the lights of the consigne before him. The van stopped. The officer got down from the box and opened the locked door with his key, whereupon Dantes stepped out and was immediately surrounded by the 4 gendarmes, who led him along a path lined with soldiers to a boat which a customs house officer held by a chain near the quay. The soldiers looked at Dantes with vacant curiosity. He was given a place in the stern of the boat and was again surrounded by the 4 gendarmes, whilst the officer stationed himself at the bows. The boat was shoved off. 4 oarsmen plied their oars vigorously, and soon Dantes found himself in what they call the Friole, that is, outside the harbor. His first feeling on finding himself once more in the open air was one of joy, for it did not mean freedom. But the whole proceeding was incomprehensible to him. Whither are you taking me? He asked. You will know soon enough. But we are forbidden to give you an explanation. Dantes knew from experience that it was useless to question a subordinate who had been forbidden to answer any questions, and he remained silent. As he sat there, the most fantastic thoughts passed through his mind. It was not possible to undertake a long voyage in such a small boat, so perhaps they were going to take him a short distance from the coast and tell him he was free. They had not attempted to handcuff him, which he considered a good augury. Besides, had not the deputy, who had been so kind to him, told him that, provided he did not mention the fatal name of Noirtier, he had nothing to fear? Had not de Villefort destroyed the dangerous letter in his presence, the letter which was the only evidence they had against him? He waited in silence and deep in thought. With that faraway look in his eyes peculiar to sailors, he tried to pierce the depths of the night, leaving Ratonneau Island with its lighthouse on their right, and keeping close to the coast. They arrived opposite the Catalan Creek. It was here that Mercedes lived, and now and then he imagined he saw the indistinct and vague form of a woman outlined on the dark shore. Why did a presentiment not warn her that the man she loved was but 100 yards away from her? If he gave a shout, she would hear him. A false shame restrained him, however. What would these men say if he called out like a madman? In spite of the repugnance he felt at putting fresh questions to the gendarmes, he turned to the one nearest him and said, "Comrade, I adjure you, on your honor as a soldier, to have pity on me and answer. I am Captain Dantes, an honest and loyal Frenchman, though accused of treason. Whither are you taking me? Tell me, and on my honor as a sailor I will submit to my fate." The gendarme scratched his ear and looked at his comrade. The latter made a motion with his head which seemed to say, "I can't see any harm in telling him now." And the gendarme, turning to Dantes, replied, "You are a native of Marseille and a sailor, and yet you ask us where we are heading for." "Yes, for on my honor I do not know." "Have you no idea?" "None at all." "Impossible." "I swear it by all that I hold most sacred. Tell me, I entreat you." "Unless you are blind, or have never been outside the port of Marseille, you must know. Look round you." Dantes got up and quite naturally looked in the direction the boat was moving. Before him, at a distance of 100 fathoms, rose the black, steep rock on which stood the frowning Chateau d'If. This strange pile, this prison whose very name spelt terror, this fortress around which Marseille had woven its legends for the past 300 years, rising up so suddenly before Dantes, had the effect on him that the sight of a scaffold must have on a condemned man. "My God!" he cried, "the Chateau d'If! Why are we going there?" The gendarme smiled. "You cannot be taking me there to imprison me," Dantes went on. "The Chateau d'If is a state prison, and is only used for important political offenders. I have committed no crime. Are there any judges or magistrates at the Chateau d'If?" "As far as I know, there are a governor, some gaolers, a garrison, and some good thick walls." "Are you trying to make out that I am to be imprisoned there?" "What about Monsieur Villefort's promise?" "I don't know anything about Monsieur Villefort's promise. All I know is that we are going to Chateau d'If." Quick as lightning, Dantes sprang to his feet and tried to hurl himself into the sea, but 4 stout arms caught him before he even his feet left the bottom boards of the boat. With a howl of rage, he fell back. The next moment, a sudden impact shook the boat from stem to stern, and Dantes realized that they had arrived. His guardians forced him to land and dragged him to the steps that led to the gate of the fortress, the police officer following him with fixed bayonet. Dantes made no useless resistance. His slow movements were caused by inertia rather than opposition. He was dazed and reeled like a drunken man. He saw more soldiers stationed along the slope. He felt the steps which forced him to raise his feet. He perceived that he passed under a door, and that this door closed behind him. But all his actions were mechanical, and he saw as through a mist. He could distinguish nothing. He did not even see the ocean. Marseille is on the Mediterranean Sea, not the ocean. Fair. That cause of heartbreaking despair to the prisoners who look on that wide expanse of water with an awful conviction that they are powerless to cross it. There was a moment's halt, during which he tried to collect his thoughts. He looked around him. He was in a square courtyard enclosed by 4 high walls. The slow and measured tread of the sentinels was heard, and each time they passed before the light which shone from within the chateau, he saw the gleam of their musket barrels. They waited here about 10 minutes, evidently for orders. At last a voice called out, "Where is the prisoner?" "Here," one of the gendarmes replied. "Let him follow me. I will take him to his cell." "Go," said the gendarme, giving Dantes a push. The prisoner followed his guide, who led him to a subterranean room whose bare and reeking walls seemed as though impregnated with tears. A sort of lamp, standing on a stool, the wick swimming in fetid oil, illuminated the shiny walls of this terrible abode, and revealed to Dantes the features of his guide, an under-gaoler, ill-clad and of a low type. "Here is your cell for tonight," he said. It is late, and the governor is in bed. Tomorrow, when he has read the instructions regarding you, he may change your cell. In the meantime, here is some bread. There is some water in the pitcher over there, and some straw in the corner yonder. That is all a prisoner requires. Good night. Before Dantes could think of an answer, before he had noticed where the gaoler had placed the bread and the pitcher of water, or looked at the corner where lay the straw for his bed, the fellow had taken the lamp and locked the door behind him, leaving his prisoner to the darkness and silence of the gaol. When the first rays of the sun had brought some light into the den, the gaoler returned with the information that Dantes was not to change his cell. An iron hand seemed to have nailed him to the spot when he stood in the night before. He was motionless, with his eyes fixed on the ground. Thus he had stood the whole night long without sleep. The gaoler advanced. Dantes did not appear to see him. He tapped him on the shoulder. Dantes shuddered and shook his head. "Have you not slept?" asked the gaoler. "I do not know," was Dantes' reply. The gaoler stared at him in astonishment. "Are you not hungry?" "I do not know," Dantes still made answer. "Do you want anything?" "I want to see the governor." The gaoler shrugged his shoulders and went out. Dantes gazed after him, stretched out his hands toward the half-open door, but the door was closed upon him. Then his whole frame was shaken with one mighty sob. The tears which choked him streamed down his cheeks. He beat his forehead against the ground. He remained a long time in prayer, and while reviewing his past life, asked himself what crime he had committed at his tender age to merit such a cruel punishment. The day passed thus. He scarcely touched his bread or water. At times he would sit absorbed in thought. At other times he would walk round and round his cell like a wild animal in a cage. The next morning the gaoler again made his appearance. "Well," he said, "are you more reasonable today than you were yesterday?" Dantes made no reply. "Come now, don't lose heart. Is there anything I can do for you?" "Hi, Trigun. Welcome in." Dantes made no reply. "Hey, Mara. Welcome in." "Come now, don't lose heart. Is there anything I can do for you?" "I want to speak to the governor." "I've already told you that is impossible," the gaoler answered impatiently. "Why is it impossible?" "Because the rules of the prison do not allow it." "Then what is allowed here?" "Better food if you pay for it, a walk in the courtyard, and sometimes books." "I don't want any books." "Neither do I want to walk in the courtyard, and I find my food good enough. I only desire one thing, and that is to see the governor." "If you keep on bothering me with that every time I come, I shall not bring you any more food." "Well then," said Dantes, "I shall die of starvation. That's all about it." "Now look here," said the gaoler, "don't go on brooding over the impossible in this way, or you will go mad before the end of a fortnight." "Do you think so?" was the reply. "I am sure of it. Madness always begins like that. We have an instance of it here. There was an abbé, or abbé, I guess, abbot, French, or an honorific applied to any priest. There was an abbé in this cell before you came. It was through his unceasingly offering 1,000,000 francs to the governor if he would set him free that his brain was turned. Listen, I am not an abbé, neither am I mad, though I may be before long. Unfortunately, I am at present in full possession of my senses. Now, I too have a proposal to make. I cannot offer you 1,000,000 francs, for that simple reason that I have not so much to give you. But I offer you 100 crowns if, the next time you go to Marseille, you will go to the Catalans and give a letter to a girl named Mercedes. Not even a letter, just a couple of lines. If I were to take that letter and were found out, I should lose my place, which is worth 1,000 francs a year, in addition to my food. So you see, I should be a fool to risk 1,000 francs for 300. Very well, said Dantes. But remember this. If you refuse to take my letter to Mercedes, or at least to tell her that I am here, I shall one day hide behind the door, and as you enter, break your neck with the stool. Threats, the gaoler called out, retreating a step, and placing himself on the defensive. You are certainly going mad. Welcome in, Oscurius. You are certainly going mad. The abbé commenced like that. In 3 days you will be raving mad. Luckily, we have dungeons at the Chateau d'If. Dantes picked up the stool and swung it round his head. That's enough. That's enough, the gaoler exclaimed. Since you insist on it, I will go and tell the governor. That's something like, said Dantes, putting the stool down and sitting on it with his bent head and haggard eyes, as though he were really losing his senses. The gaoler went out and returned a few minutes later with 4 soldiers and a corporal. The governor's orders are that the prisoner shall be taken to the dungeon. We must put madmen with madmen. The 4 soldiers seized Dantes, who fell into a kind of coma, and followed them without resistance. He descended 15 steps. The door of a dungeon was opened, and he entered mumbling, "He is right. They must put madmen with madmen." All right. So that was the first 7 chapters of The Count of Monte Cristo. I think we'll probably average between 60 to 80 pages reading, and we'll be reading more on Wednesday. So I imagine we'll probably finish this book in like 6 or 7 sessions, I believe, give or take. But yeah, that was it for today. I'm feeling a little spent. It's been about 3 hours of continuous reading. And I really don't want to have to run you guys through another ad. So let's see if we can find any readers out there. Let's see who's available. You're very welcome, Lasada. Thank you for listening. Let's see. Arrow is doing some Elden Ring. Nagi is doing some Elden Ring. I'm noticing a trend here. Death Loss is doing Lies of P. Pax is doing Fortnite. What about same category? Who do we have? Thala is playing Bioshock. Oh, that's a good game. All right, same category and following. I am down to... Oh, Maiko is playing. Oh, he's been reading for 3.5 hours. He's probably going to be ending soon. Okay. We've got... That is Spanish. Probably not a good fit. I'm at a loss. Wacky inflatable word sprint weekday. Oh, they're doing writing rather than reading. I really wish they had separated the 2 categories, but we endeavor. Okay. People that I'm following. Let's see. Let's go back here. Vil is doing a discussion for Pride Month. Day is doing Hunt. Surprise, surprise. Beru is doing art. That would be an excellent choice. Deus, who was here earlier, is playing Claire Obscure. Warlock of Firetop Mountain. Ruada Kelt is doing Warlock on top. He's another booktuber. Exemplary booktuber. Don't know. I find myself spoiled for choice. So, heck with it. We're going to go ahead and visit. I know it's a bit of a jump, but we're going to go visit Arrow. I know it's a little bit of a jump, but as far as chill vibes in Underrealm, nobody beats Arrow. Arrow's, like, I'm good, don't get me wrong, but I have my excitable moments. And my crazy voice acting that I do occasionally. But Arrow, solid, chill vibes all the way through. So if you want a really cool playthrough of Elden Ring, she's your girl. So we're gonna go ahead and raid her. Raid. I have that as there is the raid message. We're gonna do a read and raid to Erosita, who has only been playing for a little over an hour and a half, so an hour and 40 minutes. She should be playing for quite some time after this. So hang on to your hats. We're gonna go raid Erosita, also from Gen 2 of Underrealm VTuber group. So hang on. There. Okay. So we've got a raid message. We're going to raid over to Arrow. Super chill vibes. She is a celestial deity bubble from like she's got a really amazing backstory. Of course, you're very welcome, Fallen, and thank you for the book suggestion. So put that there, and I will grab my raid message and we'll head over. You guys, it's a pleasure. I'll see you in 2 days for more reading of Count of Monte Cristo. Same time, same channel. Alley-oop.